Would you like to know what it takes to become an Amazon Top 100 best-selling author? Well, then you're going to want to tune in to today's interview, and we're starting right now. Welcome to Self-Publishing with Dale, and if you want to master DIY publishing, make sure you subscribe and turn on your notifications for all my latest videos. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing somebody I've wanted to get on this show for quite some time. His name is Paul Rega. Paul is an Amazon Top 100 best-selling author. He began his writing career in 1980 while attending Western Illinois University as a staff reporter for the Western Courier. Upon graduating with a degree in biology and journalism, he spent the next 30 years in business, having started an executive search firm in 1984. His passion for writing stayed with him throughout his business life, and he started writing his first book in 1993. Paul currently lives in a small town along the Gulf Coast of Florida, where he's writing a young adult mystery series expected to be released in December 2017. Well, without any further ado, let's get to the interview. Welcoming to the show now, we've got Top 100 Amazon best-selling author, not only just in fiction, but nonfiction. This guy is cross-pollinating. Paul, welcome, man. I'm excited. I've been wanting to get you on the show for a long time.
Dale, thanks for the invite. I appreciate it. I know we've been trying to do this for a while, but I appreciate you. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, it was, I can't remember, some reason or another that we weren't able to do it. I think you weren't able to hardwire in to your line. I was like, I don't want you to have Bruce Lee lips, man. Well, it's because, you have such an interesting background here. And I'm just going to put you over right now, as we call put you over in the wrestling business. I'm going to edify you, as a better word here, is you are one of the pioneers in the Kindle publishing industry. You haven't just been here for the last couple of years. How long ago did you start, and what brought you into Kindle publishing?
Well, I started writing back in 93, 94 books, but I didn't publish until 2011. So
wow.
That's really when Kindle was taking off. We were pioneers. You're right. We were some of the first. When I started, there were 750,000 ebooks on Amazon.
Oh my gosh, that's 10 times as much now.
Yeah, there's 4.5, 5 million now, on there. So that's when we started, and that's how I started. When my first book was How to Find a Job when there were no jobs, when we were out of jobs. So yeah.
That's tremendous, and especially now. I think one of our conversations more recently, we haven't talked that much lately, and I'm sorry for that.
That's all right, you're a busy guy.
We talked about that particular book as well, and that one continues to do pretty well. Am I not right?
Absolutely. Yeah, a couple of months ago, it was ranked number 300 overall on Amazon.
Oh.
It was doing. The sales were coming in. It was after a promotion, but it was 300 overall, and paid at about $4 a book was pretty good. So but it's an anchor.
Bad.
It's an anchor book. It came out of my executive search company that I owned for 25 years. So I knew a lot about careers, and that was my first book, How to Find a Job When There Are No Jobs. And when it was released in 2011, there was a pretty major recession going on at that time.
Yeah.
And that's when it was released. In fact, when it first came out, it actually didn't do very well. And it didn't do well at all. In fact, I asked a friend of mine who's a famous author if she would take a look at it. And she said, yeah, sure, I'll take a look at it. So she looked it over, and she came back to me and she said, well, can I be honest with you?
No.
That's the thought. I said, well, of course, please do. And she said to me, she says, well, Paul, she said, the cover sucks. She says, the write-up on Amazon is really terrible. She said, I know you're a good writer. That's not the point. She said, but I read the book, and the book is very good.
It is.
She said, you need to go out and get a world-class cover artist, and I will help you do the write-up. So I did. I found a guy out of Italy, did an incredible cover on it. And then from there, she helped me with the write-up. It's different now, but she helped me with that. And we put it on Amazon, ran it free for 3 days just to get it going. Well, this is the interesting part, Dale.
Yeah.
We all know about Bookbub, right?
Bookbub, yep.
Bookbub picked that book up without me even sending it to them.
What?
Yes. They paid for the ad. Okay. They picked How to Find a Job When There Are No Jobs. Out of all these books, this is when they were first starting, okay? There were 14,000 copies downloaded in a span of a couple days, okay?
Oh my gosh,
It hit 14,
14,000?
and that's back when BookBub didn't, wasn't all that popular. They were just coming out. So I didn't pay for that. The only way I found out about it, Dale, was they sent me an email several days later and said, "We hope you like the results." And I said, "Well, yeah, it was phenomenal, And so I started telling all my friends about it, and they thought, "Well, it's kind of expensive." I said, "Yeah, but look what it did." Well, when it went back to paid after those 3 days, it shot through the top ranks, was the #1 best-selling job search and career book on Amazon, jumping over What Color Is Your Parachute, and it stayed there for months.
Oh my
That's how I got
gosh.
started. And the cover was a guy out of Italy, so the cover had something to do with it. The
Yeah.
BookBub, of course, pushed it over the edge, and that's how and that one book alone was carrying me for quite a while. That was my only book out at that point, so that's how I got started.
That is crazy. I'm sure anybody that's watching this, please
Yeah.
just do me a favor. If you agree with me, how much would you love to have 14,000 downloads of your book in a day, free or not?
Right.
Make sure you comment down below because, man, Paul, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Let me just put it this way: I've never been incontinent. Well, since I was a baby, but I definitely would soil my britches on that. I literally would just be like, I mean, I've done
Yeah.
thousands, but not into the tens of thousands in that short a period of time, and that's just incredible. So why do you think it was such a huge difference between the book description and cover to the more tightened up book description and cover? Why was that such a huge factor?
Well, it's a learning process. The first cover was done by a professional, but it just wasn't anywhere near. The guy that did it out of Italy is a professional artist. He's well known there, and he did the cover. The cover just a work of art, really. And then the write up was good. I mean, she really helped me to do that.
Wow.
And then BookBub noticed it. I mean, that's the only reason that BookBub knows it, because they're very particular about covers, write ups, things like that. And it had a few reviews on it at that point, not very many at that point,
Yeah.
because it hadn't been doing very well. Yeah, I think I was selling maybe a copy a month or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, and then that's why I said, and they have 14,000 of a nonfiction book. It downloaded like that. Like I said, it jumped. It really pushed it. I mean, I've had other books that have done more downloads, but they're and nonfiction books. In fact, Trail 32 and a few
Yeah.
others as well. But they've all been BookBub runs. But that was the first one, and it was free there. So I didn't pay for that run, which is extraordinary itself.
These days, what is BookBub? How does share with the viewers, because I've yet to actually touch on BookBub here on this channel. What exactly is BookBub, and how does it function now as opposed to back then?
Well, when they first started, they had, I think in my particular case, there was a roughly 200,000 people that were that their email was sent to. It's a focused email that they send out, and it's based
Okay.
on genre. So mine was how-to type books, etc. And there's the largest category is mysteries. And back then, I don't remember how many they had in that particular category, but I know in mine they had about 178,000 or something like that followers, for that particular genre. So what they do is they send out. It's an expensive thing. You have to pay several hundreds of dollars. They have where you can do
Yeah.
free, you can do 99-cent books, $1.99, and the further up the chain you go, the more expensive their services. In fact, a 99-cent book to run on BookBub is twice the amount it is to run a free book. Okay, so like I said, in my particular case, it was free, and they were charging me for that. But that's basically how it works. They've gotten very particular, Dale, in the last several years because the service works. It's really the only
Yeah.
major game in town. There's several other promotional services out there. Some of them are pretty good, but they don't compete at all with BookBub, because now when you send it out in one of my books, Trail 32. It's in bios and biographies. It's the rank there. I think it's somewhere about 1.5 million, 2 million targeted emails now for that particular category. But it's also almost $500 for a free run on that, and roughly $1,000 to run a 99-cent book. And so the hope is that you're going to try to get that, return on investment back. I've never lost money on Bookbub.
That's tremendous.
I do know I've run, upwards of 12 to 15 runs on Bookbub. I've had 4 of my books that have been accepted out of 6 books. So that's been really good.
That's tremendous. And of course, as soon as you get accepted once, am I assuming that you can just pretty much go back to the well on that and keep asking for ads, or do they say yay or nay?
Well, that's changing. I've never had them. I mean, they have denied me a few times, but I've also resent a letter to them, just different ways to work through that. But
Yeah.
Because of the massive numbers, they only accept 10% of all the books that they're sent to them.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you can get into it, it's not a guarantee that your book is going to sell. The book still has to be very good. The cover has to be good, because people, even though the book is free, you're still not going to get that many downloads if the book is not that good, right? It still has to be a great book,
Yeah.
And,
So they're not just getting behind any old book or any old piece of trash, for lack of better words.
not at all. I mean, they're extremely picky in terms of who they choose to run, and it's gotten worse. So even though you've been an author with them before, it's not a guarantee you're going to be able to get accepted again.
It's getting probably more and more rigid, especially now with more competition on the market.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, when they ran How to Find a Job, when there are no jobs, that book, like I said, there was 750,000 ebooks on Amazon, and now there's 4.5, 5 million. So
Yeah.
there's a lot more authors submitting to them and things like that. I mean, you do have a better chance to get accepted now. I mean, if you're an author previous that they've accepted, the quality of the books, they have some understanding of that, but they still scrutinize it. They're going to look it over to make sure that it's a book that they want to pick. And like I said, it's several hundreds of dollars to run with them.
Yeah, but it sounds like you can definitely get, is the return on investment like an assured thing? Has anybody lost on these type of ads?
Yes, I have friends of mine that have, lost money on it, but I personally haven't. I've gotten lucky with that. I've always made money on
Yeah.
it. I've run both free runs and 99-cent runs. Trail 32 was a 99-cent run, and that's probably my most successful run, with that book. We can talk about that at some point.
Yeah, definitely. I want to make sure we transition over to Trail 32, because I've read 2 of your books, and being one, the very first Trail of 32 book,
Okay.
and I've also read the Jobs book as well. A very prolific author, and that's why I'm just so excited to have you on the show. Before we transition over and start talking about that, I just got one more question about Bookbub. Are we having to compete with large publishing house books, or is this strictly self-published indie authors?
No, what's happened, and that's part of the problem, Dale, is because it really works, and I emphasize really works, because I've used almost every promotional company out there, literally hundreds of them. Okay,
Yeah.
we've created a large list. I think you've seen that list.
Yeah. It's deep.
So it's deep. It's very deep. So we've used them all. But what's happened is the large companies, Simons and Schuster's, these bigger companies, they have found that it works for sure, and they spend lots of money to promote their book. So now it's not strictly for indie books; it's essentially for everybody. And you're right, that's part of the problem. You have everybody competing for that 10% spot there.
Yeah, that's going to be really, really tough. But
It is tough.
I've submitted quite a few books myself, and I've gotten rejected. They've had a more recent feature, and I'll probably have to cover that in a future video, to where they'll reject you, but there's still a portion that they put aside for some of these books that they consider still good. They're just not going to run a promotion on them. I'm forgetting what it was, but essentially I have my own landing page through Bookbub that they're able to kind of show, hey, here's his book. So that was their way of saying, you're not completely terrible, Dale. Yeah,
well, it's not an easy thing to get accepted. And like I said, 4 of my 6 have been, and one of them was not accepted because it was too short. I mean, that was the only reason really behind that. They have restrictions on that. As far as I don't know what they are, but I think on a nonfiction book, I think it has to be 105 pages or something like that, something in that range. So each genre has its own requirements, for to get accepted.
They're definitely looking into the more traditional sense of books as opposed to the more recent kind of stretching of books where you have things like the Kindle short reads, where it's like, a 10-page book. You and I both can agree that's like a pamphlet, short story, type thing. But there are people that are profiting, hand and fist on those type of things. But rather than going down that
Absolutely.
trail,
Absolutely.
this is what a perfect segue. Rather than going down that trail,
That's right. There you go.
let's talk a little bit about your successful series, In Trail of 32.
Okay.
And unfortunately, for some reason, my brain was thinking that was fiction, but I completely forget this is a true story
It
about
is.
you. So I apologize for that complete
No, it's
there.
okay.
I got so wrapped up in the story. You do such a great storytelling within it, and I swear there's stories within stories, and it almost, to a certain extent, reminded me of a real life version of something like Stand By Me that Stephen King had put out.
Yeah, there's been several people. The book's been downloaded over 150,000 times now. So and that's both free and paid, combined. So, but
Yeah.
it's out there. It's out there. And when it first when the book first came out, it was published in 2013. I started writing in 20. I can't remember exactly, but it took me almost 10 years to put the book together.
Wow.
Because there was a lot of research involved.
Yeah.
Because you're right, it is a true story. About 32 scouts, Boy Scouts, they rode their bicycles from Wooddale, Illinois, this little town outside of Chicago, 1,400 miles to Jacksonville, Florida, in 1972. So there was no GPS back then. There was no cell phones. I mean, it was all map and compass basically. And I was 14, at the time. But what's the astonishing thing to me, Dale, is that there were 5 kids, believe this or not, that were 11 years old. I mean, I have 4 boys, 11 years old. It's pretty small, to go. We went over the Smoky Mountains too. I mean, so it was an extraordinary ride.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it just goes to show that, there's a lot of stories hiding within people. And of course, you were able to bring something that, historically speaking, is, 100% accurate,
Yeah.
no fluff, all the stuff that people want to see. And so what did you, I'm sorry for my ignorance
No, it's
here.
okay.
Is this the book that ended up breaking the top 100 or?
It is. It
Okay,
is.
that's what I thought. And
Yeah.
you made that into an entire series, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, the other 2 books are really built off of that book. I mean, essentially, there were some people that wanted the book broken in two. Some people just wanted to read about the ride itself. So I went ahead and did that. But I mean, if you read Trail 32, it's really the main book. It's, when I started it there, it was in 2000. And then when I published it, it didn't get published until 2013. So that's the length of time that it took because of the massive amount of research that went into writing that book. I called my former scoutmaster he was only 31 years old at the time of the trip, and now he's in his 70s. And when I started writing it, I contacted several people because at 14 years old, you can't remember everything. So I contacted several people. I called in every Tuesday for 2.5, almost 3 years, and we talked for 2 to 3 hours about this book. And I took just incredible amounts of notes, and so he helped me with it. And then another friend of mine who I was in the scouts with high school, went to college with, he was on the trip as well with his brother. And I contacted him, and he said to me, he said, Paul, he said, I have something you might want to have. And what had happened was there was a famous radio host, a guy by the name of Mal Belair's, who took an interest in the book, or took an interest on the book, but in the trip itself, and wanted to have us call in every day as scouts and give a live report on his radio station about what we're doing on the trip, right? So some of the moms actually taped, and the dads taped those video, or not the video, but the broadcast, the radio broadcast. And so my scoutmaster had some of the tapes. He had about 4 or 5 of the tapes. So I took those. They weren't complete. But this friend of mine said to me, I have something you might want to have. He and his brother were doing some work on their parents' house, pulled a video or a file cabinet away from the window, and behind it was a plastic bag filled with all these tapes. And he looked at his brother. He said, "Do you think this could?" And it was marked Florida trip. And he said, "Do you think this could be it?" And well, it ended up one of his nephews was big into digitizing things, so he cleaned the tapes up, put them on 2 CDs. It was a complete version of our calls, and we had to find phone booths. There were no cell phones back then, right? So
Yeah.
every day we had to find a phone booth. We didn't know where we were going to be. So every day we had that. There was one day missing, but I had it on the Scoutmasters tapes. So I had a complete record of everything that we were doing essentially on that trip based on those CDs.
That is super exciting. I got a
It
question
was,
for you
it was amazing, just to
i-
listen to it.
is there any way that readers can get their hands on that footage? Because after reading that book, I think it would be so fantastic to actually relive it as it actually played out.
It's possible. I'd have to talk to a friend of mine that actually gave those to me. He
Yeah.
technically owns the rights to those, but it's certainly possible, Dale. Because there were on the Scoutmasters version, there was a lot of blank space that was filled in with radio because they were waiting for us to come on the radio. They
Yeah.
didn't really know exactly when we were to come on. So there were reports of Vietnam, that we were bloodied in Hanoi and things like that. Well, I was able to use some of that information in the book itself. I was able to incorporate that into the book. It was very interesting, to have all of it like that.
That is just tremendous. All right. So um, we're gonna hang about here just for just a second
Sure.
here. What I would love to talk about is your strategy, your launch strategy that you did. How did you get it to be so successful? And I need you to share that cover art because to me, I've
Yeah.
seen all of your cover art. Trail 32 for some reason sticks out in my mind every single time. It has a memorable, almost heartwarming style painting slash picture.
It does. I mean, I can. Did you want me to share with you now?
Please, yes, yes, share it with us here.
This is the cover here, and it. I tell you what, I spent months trying to find an artist for this cover, and
Mhm.
it just wasn't coming through. I knew pretty much what I wanted,
Yeah,
but just nobody was coming through for me on that. And there's a cover artist that actually did come through for me on this particular book. But you're
yeah,
right, the cover had a lot to do with that. As far as the launch was concerned, there was a huge buildup of it because I had been writing it for so long. So, and
yeah.
people asking me, when is this book coming out? It was a good year of buildup, quite honestly, as to when this was going to come up. And the group that you mentioned with PDF One, that actually helped quite a bit,
Mhm.
with that whole promotional aspect of it. But what happened was when the book came out, it did well. There were a lot of paperbacks actually downloaded as well. I think people were waiting for it. I was at one point selling more paperbacks than I was ebooks, so that, which is unusual. But the book is out there. And then I wanted to get enough reviews on it and build it up before I submitted it to Bookbub, because Bookbub typically likes to have enough reviews on it. So what I did was I submitted it to them. Initially ran a free run, and there were about 28 to 30,000 downloads of the book. It was the number one book in its category. It's number two in memoirs and bios, overall, on Amazon. And then several months after that, I ran it again, but this time I wanted to try BookBub's 99-cent version of their promotional thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to turn this into a BookBub promotional situation,
It certainly
but
seems
I
like
mean, well,
that.
but they've helped me,
Yeah.
a lot. And so I ran there through them, and at 99 cents, and it shot through the top 100. It ended up being number 86 overall in paid on Amazon. At that time, about 4.5 million books. So it shot through the top 100. Like I said, landed at number 86 overall in paid.
That's crazy. And last time I saw it, it had scores of reviews on it. It's
It
just,
does, yeah.
and it's all positive. Well, I mean, with the occasional troll review, but I mean, come on, that happens. All the best authors get
It
bad reviews.
does. It does. And I think I see more of those when you run a free review, because you get some crazies out there. And there's a big buzz on the books. And a lot of times people want to knock that down. I've seen that a number of times with my books, where they come out, you have great reviews initially, and then you have maybe 30,000 downloads or something like that. And you hit number, I mean, I've hit in the top 10 with my books several times in free. That was the first time I hit in the top 100 in paid. Um,
Yeah.
you know, and then of course, how to find a job was number 300,000. So or number 300, rather, not 300,000, 300, yeah, overall.
300, yes.
300.
Not no 300,000. That's still amazing.
No,
And I'm sure some
no.
people and some newbie self-publishers are probably seeing the possibilities that are there. May I ask, how much can a person expect to have to get as far as purchases or downloads to get to that level and in the Kindle store?
Well, in the free store, I've run several. You know,
Okay.
that the Trail 32 is the only one that I ran at 99. Okay,
Yeah.
but in free, you're looking at 28 to 32,000 downloads to get. I've the highest I've gotten in free is number 2 overall in the free store, which
Wow.
is a really big deal, obviously. I've had a few friends of mine have hit number 1. I've never hit number 1 before, but number 2 is not too bad. So I'll
I'll
take it.
take it.
I'll take
Yeah.
it. And but yeah, you're looking in the high in those numbers. I mean, to break, if you can break into the top 10, that's good. But what really you want to do is break into that top, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the top 5 really,
Yeah.
because once it goes back to retail, and there's a strategy with that. You know, you and I've talked about that. We talked to other friends about this whole strategy, because when you want to come out, you'd like to be able to come out of it on the upscale. So a lot of times I'll run just maybe a 2-day run on them. I've seen it where people run 3, but by the time it's 3 days, it starts to back off. When you run out, it changes. The algorithms on Amazon are a big deal, you know, with this stuff. When you have that many downloads, it alters the algorithms on Amazon, and then you know about this stuff. You're placed in a more favorable position
Mhm.
within Amazon than the also bots and things like that. The uh, best the new sellers, things like that. Uh,
Yeah.
things like that. So
So as far as the paid store,
yes.
about how many downloads can a person expect to, how many purchases can a person expect? Like, is it going to be like a couple hundred to get into that top 100 spot,
No,
300, 400?
no. You're looking in the 1,000+ range. You know, yeah. I think on Trail 32, I think it was maybe 24, 25, somewhere in that range. I can't remember exactly, but you know, to get into where it was number 86, it was a couple thousand, I think 2,300 or something like downloads,
Wow.
somewhere in that range. I mean, it more than paid for the ad. And what
Yeah.
happens too is really the ad paying for the ad's great, but what happens is the aftermath of that, you know, the residual sales going outside of that promotional period, because of course it's going to start to wane, you know, a little bit. But then that is where, you know, you have a strategy to just promote the heck out of it after that, with as many other promotional um, companies as you can find, and you know, using Facebook, using Twitter.
Hmm.
As you know, I use Twitter a lot. I mean, I have about 40,000 followers on Twitter now. So you know, we use a lot of those types of promotional companies to keep the momentum going after the fact, so you can make
Yep.
more money.
You mean you just can't let it just sit and it just stays at the top all the time? What? What are you
I
telling me
wish I
here, man?
wish that was the case. You know, I wish that was the case.
Yeah,
But
we'd be independently wealthy at this point because of how much we put into ads. If we, you know, if it was just simply
exactly.
letting it set up, it's like, oh, well, if we put ads,
Yeah.
of course it's going to be the #1 bestseller on New York
Right.
Times. So before we finish up and such, I definitely want to briefly touch on something you mentioned before, and we were talking just before we got connected here. Is the PDF one group, and
Yes.
this is actually how I ended up stumbling on you is through
Okay.
Facebook, and I came familiar with you. Created among, with a few other people,
Yes,
something that became a trend, a
there was.
hashtag
Yeah.
that was a trend. So tell me a little bit about that. And of course, how can people get more information about how to use that tool?
Well, PDF1 was a hashtag that was created from a group, a small group of, there were just 17 people. It started out with about 8 or 9 people, grew to a group of 17, but it was a group that was by design only going to be 20 people, and it only ended up being 17. But what happened, Dale, was it was such a focused group that every time that we had a promotion, everybody in that group, all 17 of those people, pushed out those books in a very massive way.
Yeah.
And PDF One, as you know, became one of the most popular hashtags for writers and bloggers, etc.
Hmm.
And you're right, it was trending at one point on Twitter, and it had last time I checked, it was about a 12 million person reach. So it was pretty amazing, and it did push us into that. It helped, the other writers in that group. We were all running numerous promotions. A lot of people were running BookBub ads at that point, and so every time there was a PDF One, pound PDF One stands for paid forward, and the group's name was paid forward. That was the name of the group. And so that's how it came. And the group ran for almost 4 years. We disbanded, but the hashtag, of course, remains.
Yeah.
Anybody can essentially use it. But what I tell people is, if you're very interested in having, you can't just put pound PDF One and have miracles happen. But what
No.
you, but it will work. It does work. You get more down. You get more retweets and things like that. In fact, it's even being used in Facebook as well, and Instagram. Pound PDF One is used across most of the medias now. If you type it in Facebook, you'll see that it's followed through there, as well. So that's really how that all came. What I tell people is, if they're interested in using it, go ahead and use it, but also do a search on Twitter and Facebook and follow everybody that's using that tag, and start retweeting their stuff to let them know that you're following them, to please follow back. And
Yeah.
within a relatively short period of time, you'll have a lot more followers. It's one of the reasons I have as many followers as I have, because it
Hmm.
generated so much interest, in the internet. Like you said, you've used it yourself. So
I have, and actually, to this day, I still use it, and I still stumble upon new authors and self-publishers I'd never met before because of that particular hashtag. And I think it's just tremendous. What you did was form an inner circle of people and created a movement. So it speaks volumes to not only your character, but also your passion for this business. And I think that was one thing that really resonated with you. It was funny because I think you and I met in another group, and you might have been adminning it, and you sent me a message, and I was just flattered because I looked you up and I'm like, what is this guy doing? He's a popular author and he's talking to me. So of course I was just
well,
flattered. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so awesome. I'm like, and I think I specifically I want to learn from you. Whatever you're doing, I
well,
want to do it exactly like that.
and I've learned a lot from you too, Dylan. I appreciate it. What we did with that group is we would purposefully funnel ourselves out, fan ourselves out into other groups that were just getting started. They
Yeah.
didn't know who we were, but we were using our philosophy of paid forward. And as soon as, and we would put maybe 4 or 5 people into a small group that was starting out, and we would help them get started with it. And that was our philosophy, was to help build other groups and build the philosophy. And the small group, it was the magic, because the larger groups. I have another group. I think you've seen it. Advertise your books. It's
That was
over
it.
about 14,000 people, in that group, right?
Yeah.
And but that's why I continue. I mean, it's helping me with my other books. I just 2 months ago I finished my 12th book.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm working on my 13th one. Rather, they're young adult mystery series that I'm working on right now. They're all fiction, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. I have 4 done. I'm working on the 5th. They'll be released in the 2 of them will be released in December sometime. But it's going to be
Nice.
upwards of 30 books in that series.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's so fantastic that you're planning ahead. And boy, I feel like we can go into another conversation
We
when it
could,
comes to
yeah.
that. Because that's where, you start getting into fiction, and there's, obviously you're being very deliberate with releasing it in quarter 4, because as you and I both can agree, quarter 4 magic happens, baby.
It is. Yeah, December is a good time to release them, and I'll release 2, and then about 6 to 8 weeks release another one. 6 to 8 weeks another one. It's called the Billy Logan Mystery Series, and it's really cool. I've got a mission, essentially, because I want to get boys reading. There's a lack of books for young boys, and I want
Oh,
to get them to
nice.
read. And it's a lot about the outdoors. I want to get these kids to experience more of the outdoors, and those 2 things combined I think it'll make a better people. I mean, I embrace the technology, and these kids, they know technology.
Yeah.
It's young kids that are in the book, but to embrace the technology along with the outdoors, I think is the key, and that's what I'm trying to do with it. And to get more kids to read, boys in particular.
That's
Well,
fantastic. It speaks volumes, and I tell you, I think reading saved me as a kid because that's pretty much what led me to where I am today.
yeah.
But at any rate, how can people reach you? And is there any? You've already kind of talked about some of your publications, but let's just kind of mention a couple of them again as we wrap up the show.
Yeah, no, the best way to reach me really is anybody can, I use my personal Facebook page as my author page. I do have an author page as well, but
Yeah.
I like to use the other pages because I like to help other authors to promote their work on my personal Facebook page. Most of my Facebook page is dedicated, to other authors. If I'm running something, of course, I'll run my thing. So Facebook is a great way to do it. Just Paul Rega, Rega is my last name, but it's that plus Twitter, at Paul Rega Books is my largest one, is a good way to do that, or at Paul Rega. I do have a website, it's paulrega.com. So I use all those things, to promote the books.
And any closing words as we start to wrap up today's interview? Any kind of advice that you can give to new self-published authors out there, and some kind of encouragement or motivation you can offer them?
Yeah, I would say this, Dale. What I see, what I have seen in the period of time that I've gone from where I was at. I left a business to write full time in 2011. I jumped off the cliff and wrote full time for 3.5 years before I started doing a few other things. But what I have seen is that a lot of authors have come into the market. They've seen some of the early successes with other authors, and they think they're going to be, instantaneously rich. That's of course not the case. Although I do have a friend of mine, you might know him, Martin Crosby, who made $46,000 on his book, My Temporary Life, when his first book came out. And that's in one book in 1 month. He's an extraordinary guy. But he's helped me a lot. I've had a lot of help, from people, and so I try to help other authors as much as I possibly can. But my one bit of advice would be this: is to keep writing. We're all practicing still. I know that I'm getting better. I can feel that. I get into a zone much quicker now than I used to, but it is a zone. But what I see a lot of authors do is they stop writing. They're not writing as much. I'm a dedicated writer, and in order to be a writer, you have to write. As simple as that sounds, right, Dale?
Right. Yes. It's so simple to say, but harder to do sometimes, I'll tell
It
you.
is, but you have to force yourself. I've written
Yeah.
books when I haven't felt like it, and I push through that, and I'll go back because I won't really know how good the stuff is until I go back and read it. And especially when you're not feeling all that well, and you go back and you read something, you're like, well, that's pretty good. But I wasn't feeling that good, at that point. But I kept writing, and that's the key to it. It's just you have a mission. If you have a mission like I do, as far as what I want to do with these books, that does help.
Oh
And
yeah.
these young adult mysteries, that's what I'm doing. I'm focused on young adult stuff right now. If you have a mission as opposed to, I would say, trying to follow the trends. I don't follow the trends really. I mean, young adult, of course, is a trend. That's not why I'm doing it. I'm
Yeah.
doing it because I love it, and I know that I know I can sell the books. So that's a big part of it. You have to have that combination of being able to sell them. And if you don't know how to do it, you have to learn how to do that. Even if you're with a big publisher, they're not going to do as much for you in today's world.
It's
So,
true.
and you have a lot of authors say, I love to write, but I don't like to sell. And my thought process to them is, so well, you want people to read your books, right? And they're like, yeah, well, then you're going to have to learn how to sell.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's what I tell them. Keep writing and learn how to sell, and you'll be relatively successful.
Man, on that note, I think it's just perfect for us to wrap things up, Paul.
All
I
right.
really appreciate you taking time out of your day. Make sure you stick around after I get ready to disconnect. Thanks.
Absolutely great to talk to you. Thank you.
A big thanks again to you, Paul. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day and being so transparent with exactly how you were able to get to the Amazon Top 100 bestseller list. Big congrats to you on that, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what your young adult mystery series is going to produce. That's it for today. Remember, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure that you share it with at least one other person into DIY publishing too. Till later, this has been Self-Publishing with Dale, and I'll see you soon.